What's going on, everybody? Back to another episode of the Sooner Nation podcast. I'm Matt Hofeld along with Rich DeCray. Heartland-sports.com is our thing. Thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit, whether you're doing it live on Facebook or you're catching us on TalkShoe or at the website, heartland-sports.com. Oklahoma rolls, Oklahoma State rolls. Good weekend for the Big 12. I mean, I don't know where to go with this because here's what I want to know, your opinion right off the get-go. Best football conference in America after 3 weeks of football is what?
I knew that you were going to ask this. For me, I still feel like it's difficult.
Don't do it. Don't do it
to go. Okay, if we're looking realistically, I think the Big 12 has two contenders for a national championship, and it is going to come down to Bedlam. What happens?
Okay, let me stop you here because there's so far to go with this. Does Bedlam eliminate?
It doesn't eliminate.
Or does Bedlam round 2 eliminate?
Bedlam round 2 eliminates because I do think that gives someone not necessarily a statement win because that comes in Bedlam, but it solidifies their spot. Okay, so then let me throw this out at you. You look at what the conferences around the country are doing. You start with the Big Ten. You've got Penn State. You go to the ACC. Are you ready to jump on the Clemson bandwagon? I am. You and I had a conversation via text about this very thing. So Clemson, most impressive team of the season through 3 weeks.
All right. So you've got Penn State. You've got Clemson. You go to the SEC. It's Alabama. Big 12. You talk about Oklahoma State. I'm throwing TCU in there still as a spoiler alert. And then you go out west. The Pac-12's done. I'm sorry. You've got USC there at number 5.
And I don't know that they're deserving.
UCLA lost at Memphis. There's just so much bad football going on right now out west. Pac-12's out. I mean, all the Power 5s can't get somebody in as it is. Mm-hmm. At this point, I'm ready to say the Pac-12's out.
I agree.
But
at this point in time.
So follow me in this scenario.
Did you even mention the Big Ten? Because I feel like they've got two contenders as well.
No, there's one. Penn State.
Okay.
Who's your other one? Maryland?
No. I still am throwing Wisconsin in there. I think
Wisconsin's not.
I think they've got a fairly decent quarterback who isn't getting the credit that is due him.
No, the best player in the Big Ten is Barkley. I mean, and we're going to talk about him here later on, but Big Ten is Penn State or bust, in my opinion. Now, Ohio State could run the table and get in there and win. But okay, that's a great example for where I'm going with this. Because I totally cut you off on your answer, but okay. So let's throw a scenario out there. Let's say Ohio State wins the Big Ten championship, and then it looks like Clemson wins undefeated, right?
Right.
So they're undefeated. They win. They win the ACC. Alabama goes undefeated and wins the SEC. Now follow me on this. What if Oklahoma beats Oklahoma State regular season, and then in the most stupid conference game in the history of conference games, I don't understand why the Big 12 just wants to be like everybody else. They're that kid.
Well,
do you remember? You go because you're young. But okay, so when I was a kid, I'm going so far off course of this. But older people, in their 40s and plus will remember this. You grew up on Transformers, right? You had the Transformers robots toys. Just say yes.
Sure.
Okay.
You didn't, but sure.
What do you mean you didn't?
Okay.
You knew what
I don't want to get
not that you personally had Transformers.
Right, we had Biker Mice from Mars.
But okay, so you're that kid. Because when I was a kid, there was the Transformers and they were the toy. And then there was GoBots. All right, GoBots were like the cheap version of Transformers, right? They did the exact same thing. A Transformer, Optimus Prime, and then you had like this truck that was a GoBot.
That's how they get you, though. Those were the Decepticons.
But here's the thing, is that you had two different brands of the same toy. One was a better quality. One was just because. And so the kids that didn't want to spend money on Transformers, they bought GoBots. And then when you're a little kid, you have your Transformer party, and someone shows up with a GoBots, and all the other kids who had Transformers made fun of the kid who had GoBots. You were apparently you were. No, you've already confessed that you were that kid. That's what the Big 12 is doing with this championship game. All the other kids have championship games. The Big 12 doesn't even have enough teams to technically qualify. Yeah. They don't have the schedule for it, but hey, we're going to do it, and all the other kids are making fun of the Big 12 for it.
It literally doesn't make sense. You're right, in a round-robin style format that the Big 12 is currently set up for with 10 teams. But I remember when this was the big debate and the consistent word from anyone in the Big 12, the higher-ups that is, was we feel like we've been left out of the playoff because we don't have a conference championship.
My frustration, yes, go ahead.
Crap.
Yes, my frustration is the Big 12 got left out of the playoff because they would not.
Because of one true champion?
Because they would not make one true champion. That's it. Oklahoma made the playoff, and then you had Baylor and TCU. All the Big 12 had to do was say, Baylor is our conference champion, or TCU is our conference. Just pick one, and you're in the playoff. But since you can't pick one, the committee's like, well, you only know your conference champion is. You're not getting in. So take some personal responsibility for the way that this conference has been poorly run. But I do say this about the Big 12 championship game. I don't think the Big 12 is dead. I think there's another round of expansion coming, and the groundwork is set for that. That's the only way this can make sense in my head. But now let's go back to my scenario that goes back to the question I asked you at the very beginning. Oklahoma beats Oklahoma State in Stillwater, but finds a way to lose to the Cowboys in the conference championship game. So then you've got Oklahoma and Oklahoma State 10-1. Mm-hmm. 12-1, I guess it'd be 12-1.
Yeah, there you go.
One loss. How's that? Who gets in the playoffs? Is Ohio State left out because they lost to Oklahoma? Is Oklahoma left out because they're not conference champion?
Well,
how does that work?
The reality of the situation is I don't think Ohio State's a one-loss team this year.
No, I know, but just in my scenario.
So in your scenario, I think there's a real possibility they would take two Big 12 teams. You look at a team that comes in, was labeled as a pretender by a lot of the media going into Columbus, Ohio.
Right.
And they come out in the second half and completely dominate. I would be willing to say they dominated the first half as well. Defensively, holding Ohio State to 3 points, moving the ball. It was just 2 turnovers.
I agree with Baker that should have been, they should have been by more. Right. And the pretenders thing.
You saw the shirts.
No, they played on that even in the, Toby does the scene setter, and that was in the scene setter is we're not pretenders.
Did you see the shirt that came out this weekend?
No.
Lincoln Riley post game, Ohio State said, I don't know what the question was that he was asked, or if it was even in his opening statement, but he said, we're just a bunch of pretenders trying to win a bunch of games.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, so needless to say, I think there's a real shot that you would have to take two Big 12 teams. Based on Oklahoma going in with that big win, that was a statement win. If they win Bedlam, that's a second statement win. TCU, Oklahoma State can claim a semi-statement win because TCU is a lot better.
Oklahoma State made a statement. I mean, Pitt is nowhere near the caliber of. You look at, in my opinion, the best win in America right now, the best college football win is Oklahoma at Ohio State. We've talked about that.
Right.
Second best win is Alabama over Florida State. And going to Pitt and beat, in my opinion.
Okay.
You going to say USC over Texas?
I was going to look at, you're a big fan of Clemson right now being the number one team in the country.
I think Alabama over. Now, that was a road trip for Clemson.
I'm not even talking about Clemson. You could look at the Auburn in Louisville. So I am talking about Clemson. I meant Louisville. I agree with you.
Well, what I was going to say is
Alabama.
Penn State is not Pitt is not in that same category as a Florida State, as an Ohio State. But that was a good statement for Oklahoma. I mean that was their hey, we're real. Because the question mark was, and I even wrote about this. The question mark was you play a Tulsa team at home. They don't even know who their starting quarterback is, and you roll over them. You go on the road, air quotes, to a half-empty stadium in Mobile, Alabama, and you play a South Alabama team that, their quarterback went out in the first series, and Oklahoma State just rolls. And then you go to Pitt, and this is where everyone's saying, okay, now they're playing somebody.
Right.
And this is why I think the Big Ten is probably. I mean, that Pitt team gave Penn State a handful the week before. Now Penn State ended up winning that game comfortably late, but Pitt was in that game well into the second half. They were never at home. They were never in this game with Oklahoma State. Never. And that is a statement when people look at, and it's not always fair to compare scores. It's not always fair to say, well, this is what Oklahoma State did with Pitt, and this is what Penn State did with Pitt.
Right.
But you can look at, when you're talking about quality and caliber of teams, this Oklahoma State offense may legitimately be the best offense in the country.
Yeah.
I don't think they're.
I would say that undeniably.
Now, their defense is, I'm not. I mean, and again, it could just be me looking at things, but I go back to Tulsa not knowing who their quarterback was, South Alabama losing their quarterback on the opening possession. Pitt ended up swapping quarterbacks. They've not yet played a solid offense. That's coming this Saturday. And I believe that I don't understand why game day is in Times Square. Yeah. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. Because this is, in my opinion, I'm biased towards the Big 12, but this is the national game of the week, in my opinion. And it's going to be the test for Oklahoma State. But they've already made their statement. And when you look at the Heisman, I'm out now. I was Lamar Jackson all the way, but I said last week if they have a bad game, and he did. I mean, he was not spectacular against Clemson, and Clemson was a great defense, but Ohio State was a great defense, and Baker Mayfield carved them up. Yeah. I think Baker Mayfield right now has to be your Heisman front runner, but then I think Mason Rudolph is right behind him. I think the two best quarterbacks and the two best football players in the country are in the state of Oklahoma, and then you put Barkley there, Penn State running back, at number 3, but in my opinion, it's a distant number 3. So when you shake out the Heisman, I mean, Josh Rosen was not good against Memphis.
And I told you he didn't deserve to be in the conversation based off of one performance.
He did off of that opening week, and I tweeted out on Saturday all those credits that Josh Rosen got against Texas A&M in week 1, he spent every single one of them last Saturday at Memphis.
They may have the play of the year when it's all said and done.
Memphis?
No. UCLA.
Oh, the clock play? Yeah, I get that. But that's not the hot. But the same thing with Darnold at USC. People want to give Texas credit, and hey, I don't mind giving Texas credit. You still lost. Texas is into moral victories now, apparently. But we have been saying from week 1 that USC is overrated, and this dude throws was it 2 or 3 interceptions, and they're terrible passes.
I watched that game.
I got home from Norman. I saw the last 7 minutes, and I saw overtime.
Let me ask you, post game, when they were doing all of the interviews, they brought Sam Darnold on to sit at the bench with the analysts. And they continuously ask these questions, and the one label that continuously came up from what I saw was people labeling that USC-Texas game in the Coliseum as an instant classic. Not only was it on TV, but it was also in social media. People that I have friended on social media
if you're a fan of football,
are saying, I'm glad I tuned in. And that's exactly what I'm thinking. I was like, what did you see that made you think that was an instant classic? Because to me, it was sloppy from the very opening kickoff to that final field goal.
Yeah,
sloppy.
Just bad. It was bad.
It was both teams playing sloppy, and that wasn't. Is it a classic because it was overtime? I just don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, the double overtime does. I mean, I'm a sucker for overtime. When that game went into overtime, I actually got excited because I am a sucker for college. College overtime is the best thing ever, and so yeah, I kind of got suckered in on that, and I enjoyed the overtime. I enjoyed the fumble. Let me ask you this. I mean, because this is it's no secret. I do not like Texas.
Raise your hand in the room if you do.
I mean, we talk about it. I will cheer for the Big 12. Most cases, I'll cheer for the Big 12. Kind of carry the banner. But I am not going to cheer for Texas. But I have a question. You've got a true freshman quarterback playing on the road Why was he? And it wasn't even close. I'll look up the stats here. Well, you're my stat guy. Look at the amount of carries that Texas had running the football. Look at the rushes to passes, and then look at how many of those rushing attempts were. What up, Felix? Sorry. How many of those rushing attempts were? How many of those were from the quarterback, and how many were from the running back? I don't get that. I only watched 7 minutes of that game. And I'm thinking, 7 minutes of regulation plus overtime. I'm thinking, what in the world is going on here? Why are you riding the arm of a freshman quarterback on the road against a top 4 team in the country? That doesn't make sense to me. And I get Tom Herman, the quarterback whisperer, and all that stuff, but that didn't make sense. So while you look at those stats, let me go back to the first question. Best football conference in America is who? You're about to not say the Big 12, but I think did I sway you at all? Or are you still going to say not the Big 12?
I don't know. Let's put it this way. When I walked in today to sit down and chat with you, I was clearly on one side of the fence. I'm back up on the fence and swaying towards the Big 12. But it's hard for me to say the Big 12 is the best conference because when you say conference, you have to look top to bottom.
Right, I'm with you.
And it's difficult looking at teams like Kansas, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Baylor, who are going to struggle to win games in conference play and struggle to win games in the non-conference portion of the schedule. So it's hard for me to look at that, but I say the same thing about the SEC.
But I can see your Kansas and Baylor and raise you a Missouri and Ole Miss.
That's what I'm saying is I can say the exact same thing.
And by the way, LSU just got destroyed by by Mississippi State. And the same thing. You can go to every conference and I'm not defending Baylor and Kansas. Let's keep in mind I'm the one who said Baylor would be the cellar dweller this year in the Big 12. And when you talk about the bottom of the conference, I think there's no better conference in America that has worse teams at the bottom than the Big 12. They are the Kansas and Baylor, legitimately 2 of the worst programs in the nation. But what's going on at the top? How deep can the Big 10 go? You talked about maybe 2 teams, maybe 3 if you want to include Ohio State, Wisconsin. I don't think Wisconsin's there, and Penn State. Okay, so we'll put 3. Are there 3 in the Pac-12? No. Are there 3 in the ACC? No.
There's one.
There's one.
I was thinking there were 2.
And when you look at the SEC, you've got Alabama and who?
I mean, Auburn, maybe.
Florida,
maybe.
Really?
I mean,
they
had that incredible play. Hey, they had another candidate for player of the year.
Yeah, I saw that, and I also saw Butch Jones' hot seat get really, really stoked.
Hey, if I could throw a ball 66 yards in the air,
well, that whole play, why are you covering? If you look at the safety on that play, on a Hail Mary play, why is the safety covering an underneath route? That's bad coaching. I mean, you can blame it on the player, but that's bad coaching. You don't play on a Hail Mary play.
No.
No one gets behind you.
I don't agree with you here. And the reason being is because you can coach a player all you want. They still have to execute. I don't think that's coaching. I think that's the player.
No. Yeah. If that's a player, then that player's never getting back on the field in that situation. You practice those situations. And the thing that you tell your players is no one behind you.
Yeah.
I don't care if the guy goes. They have to go 60 yards. If they throw it 15, you still have 45 yards of tackle space.
You could say the exact same thing about Texas because
I was just saying, I don't think. Did you look at the stats?
Yeah, I've got the stats. But Texas played that soft coverage, and what happens? Sam Darnold marches down.
There's a difference between soft coverage and playing underneath on a Hail Mary.
I agree.
I mean, there's a big difference.
But is that bad coaching or is that on the players because they're not making
I'd say they're both bad coaching, but still,
as long as you're the same across the board.
But I would give you soft coverage that prevents soft. I would give that to you over playing underneath on a Hail Mary. I mean, even on a Hail Mary, you're yelling at your players from the sidelines even. And there's no reason for a player to bite on an underneath route. I mean, because, again, they catch a 15-yard pass. They have 45 yards to tackle this guy with the ball. All right, rushing stats for Texas.
Yeah,
how many passing attempts to running attempts?
So there were 40
passing attempts, okay. And how many
rushing? Only completed 21. Sam Ehlinger rushed 19 times. 5 of those were sacks, so 14 times technically.
Then how many did? What about Warren? How many rushes did he have?
4.
Who's the next to Ellinger?
Kyle Porter with 5.
Help me understand that. Because I think Warren is an NFL talent. He is an NFL talent back. I don't know, man. So you're gonna who are you? I'm just saying SEC is not deep. I think in the Big 12, Kansas State hurt the Big 12, no doubt. Shame on you, Wildcats. Because they lost, not only did they lose on the road, they lost on the road in the SEC, and not only did they lose on the road in the SEC, they lost to Vanderbilt. So that's a bad loss. I'm going to say that's a bad loss for the Big 12. But you still have Oklahoma State, I think 2 top 5 teams. I mean, Oklahoma State is not ranked as high as they should be.
And the reason being is you've already mentioned it. We've talked about Oklahoma State's offense. We've talked about how explosive they are. But one thing that I noticed as they were playing Pitt was Washington's name wasn't called a ton the time that I was watching it. And so when we talk about the most explosive offense and you saying they may have, this is why it is a for sure thing, is because you saw 2 other receivers step up numerous times.
Well, yeah, they're just across the board deep at receivers. I mean, they're every single one of those. And Aikman has a great NFL body.
Yeah.
And he's got the quickness and everything.
They're going to be a difficult team.
I'm just going to go ahead and answer this question that we have been trying to answer for 20 minutes now.
The Big 12.
Big 12 is the best conference
on the top.
Across the board. I mean, across the board, there's not a conference with more contenders than the Big 12. And I'm going to throw TCU in there as a contender.
Until Saturday?
Well, maybe. but what if TCU's only losses this season? What if their only losses are to Oklahoma State and Oklahoma?
That's a pretty good season for them.
So can we not say that they were a contender? I mean,
a contender for the Big 12, maybe. I don't know that I put them in the contender for a national championship.
Now, what if they beat Oklahoma State in Stillwater this Saturday? Not going to happen. But what if they do? I don't think it's going to happen, but I think they have potential.
And I think they jump inside the top 10 if that happens.
I think, I agree. Okay, Oklahoma just had their way with Tulane, 56-14, close game up front. Both Mike Stoops and Lincoln Riley said you got to adjust. I mean, I'm sitting there and people are mad. You know, why are they running the ball on us? Why can't we stop them? The triple option is difficult to defend.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why people don't do the triple option, and it's 2 reasons. The first reason is it requires a special set of talent. And it starts with a quarterback. You have to have a triple option quarterback, meaning that quarterback has to be able to run past, and he is going to be able to do it good. And he's got to make quick decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Tulane's quarterback wasn't the greatest at that. As Parnell Motley made him
starting quarterback.
Well, I get that, but you got to have it starts with the quarterback. You got to have a fullback, and you got to have at least 2 deep on running backs that can break it. But the first option, the quarterback gets the ball, and his first read is what those linebackers are doing.
Right.
And if they're sucked in, then you're giving it on the dive. The second option is for him to keep it and run it. The third option is the pitch. And it's hard to defend, and you've got to play this sound gap assignment football. And Oklahoma, on their first 2 drives, on Tulane's first 2 drives, Oklahoma did not do that. But once they shored up those gaps and they forced everything outside, beginning, midway through that second quarter, the game broke on Parnell Motley's interception. But I think in the third quarter, Tulane had like 8 yards of total offense.
Yeah.
I give Oklahoma credit on this because, number 2, for 2 reasons I give them credit. The first thing I give them credit for is understand that Matt Romar, again, was lifted out. Did you say anything at the conference today about Matt Romar?
No, his name didn't even come
up. Matt Romar lifted out of the whatever injury happened to him in that first drive. But the fact that they made adjustments, they made the right adjustments, and the fact that they had the personnel options to make adjustments. Because this is a defense that's banged up. And you got a freshman out there in Kith Mann starting a middle linebacker. I mean, you've got all kinds of issues going on there with this defense personnel-wise, but they still had the option to make the right adjustments and shut this thing down. Rough start, but a fantastic finish.
Talking about the defense, were you impressed with Neville Gallimore's play?
I've been impressed with his play since UTEP.
Because I think he may have had the hit of the game on the quarterback when he came over just around around the offensive lineman and basically just shouldered him to the ground.
Well,
you remember that?
Yeah, I also remember.
I know you were there in person. There's a lot going on.
I remember I took my 7-year-old daughter for the first time, which mistake. Yes, mistakes were made, but that's not the hit of the game. And Obo had a one-arm tackle, a one-arm sack. I don't know if you saw that or not either. In the third quarter, Obo just takes him down with one arm. Not the hit of the game. You know what the hit of the game was, right? CeeDee Lamb had the hit of the game. And it was not an ejection. It was not. It was not targeting.
I know you didn't catch the presser, so let me fill you.
No, I saw the. I saw what the official said Saturday night, and honestly, I was too angry to write something about it because here's what it all comes down to: head and neck. The targeting has to be in the head and neck area. CeeDee Lamb hit that guy with his shoulder in the chest. Now, I'm not an anatomy, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a biology major, but I know that the chest is not the head and neck. I also know if you get head in the chest, it makes your neck...
clavicle, the neck?
That's an inside joke. But anyway, by the rule, what they're saying, targeting, yes. But by the video clearly shows the shoulder going in. He didn't even lead with his head. The shoulder is what hit him in the chest. It was as clean of a block as you can get. And the fact that it was, I can understand the official on the field seeing it was so much going on, seeing it and throwing the flag. I get that. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. Okay. My problem is how can it be reviewed and you still say the head and neck area? It did not involve the head and neck area.
I think the biggest evidence that argues for your case here versus an official
is the video.
Yeah,
the video that shows
so
clean block.
I know that there are numerous angles that they have access to, and so there are some angles. It's clear as day, in my opinion, that it's not worthy of an ejection. Them throwing the flag, sure, I get that player safety has become a major concern on the college level, specifically with targeting calls. The biggest piece of evidence that argues in your favor is when did that kid's head snap backwards? It didn't.
Right.
And so how can you say that there was helmet-to-helmet, head-to-head contact? The only argument that they can then make at that point is that CeeDee Lamb led with the crown. And again, he didn't.
He hit him with the shoulder.
So I don't see it myself.
Again, not a medical professional, but I'm pretty sure the crown of your head, the crown of your helmet is not found on your shoulder.
I don't see it. Lincoln Riley in his press conference this afternoon said that he didn't agree with the call. I don't know if there are fines attached for things that he said.
Yeah, because Lincoln Riley said Saturday night and in the post-game press conference, Lincoln Riley said that they expected it to be overturned. Mm-hmm. And then they asked him what did the officials say to you about it? And Lincoln Riley said, well, I'll just keep that between me and the official. And I don't know if you remember one of the times after a baseball game even, we were interviewing Pete Hughes, and I asked him about a controversial play, and Pete just gave us his interpretation of the play, and then he said, and that's all I'm going to say about it because I don't want to get fined. So yeah, the fact that they protect these officials, and this just shows the stupidity of the whole moment. They protect these officials, right? And then the release on the statement from the official has to come from a pool reporter. A pool reporter means no one knows who it is. A pool reporter just came and said, here's what the official said. So no one from Oklahoma, no one from...
Delivered in an envelope
no one from the media who covers this team got to go to that official and say, tell me what you said. That through a pool reporter, they gave the interpretation of the rule. I don't care what the interpretation of the rule is. What I care about is what did you see on the video that made you interpret that was what happened on the field? Because what 85,000 people saw in the video was a shoulder going into the guy's chest.
It's actually 86.
Well, whatever. But I'm just saying, it's just the ridiculousness of this is that it's a bad call, it's a blown call, and there's no accountability. Because that guy didn't even have to stand in front of a group. You know what? If Baker Mayfield has a bad game, He throws 4 interceptions. He's got to stand in front of a group of media members, and they ask him, okay, on the 3rd interception, what did you see? Why did you make that throw?
Right.
Are you injured? Are you sick? Why are you having a bad day? If Lincoln Riley makes a bad call, makes a bad decision as the offensive coordinator or the head coach, he's got to stand in front of the media, and they get to ask him. And we've been a part of those press conferences when we see something and we get to go in those media rooms and we get to talk to a player or a coach. And we've asked those questions in the past. There's nothing like that takes place with these officials. And that is just stupid. If you're going to leave, I'm going on it. This is not even scripted, man. It's not even on our thing. But if you're going to leave a rule open to interpretation, and that's the worst thing about this targeting rule, is it's open to interpretation. If you're going to leave it what it is, that the officials get to interpret it, then you have to make it where that official gets to stand in front of people and say, here's what I saw. And to release what the rule is just stupid, because no one cares what the rule is. They know what the rule is. We want to know, what did you see to make that call? And heaven forbid that this was an important game. But here's what was sacrificed at it, is that CeeDee Lamb was he was like 20 yards away from breaking Ryan Broyles' record for receiving yards in a game as a freshman. He already set receiving yards in a half.
So did Marquise Brown break that?
I don't think so. It's like
he had 155.
Oh, maybe he did then. I was just caught up in CeeDee Lamb messing up. Anyway,
I didn't know that. I had no clue that was record.
Here's what happened. I was there and I was like, hey, CeeDee Lamb's about to hit a freshman record. He's about to break Ryan Broyles' freshman receiving record for a game. I said that right before the play he got ejected. And so then he gets ejected and everybody looks at me like, good job, man. Way to jinx him on that. So, okay, position grades. Oklahoma dominates. On the offense, we've got to talk about running backs. But for the most part, it's A's across the board. I wanted to ask you this about Mark Andrews. I said last week he should not have played.
Mm-hmm. So are you going to ask me if I agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, in hindsight now, what do you think?
2020. He shouldn't have played. You're absolutely right. I think Grant Calcaterra has shown that he is a guy who can step in and make plays when asked to. Granted, he had that drop at Ohio State, but nonetheless, I still think going right back to him, he proved himself. Was Mark Andrews a necessary part of the equation facing a team like Tulane? I don't think so. And him re-aggravating that knee,
which Riley says is not an aggravated injury.
I agree.
But we all know
that it probably isn't.
Well, there's something wrong with it.
Well, they just said he wasn't at 100% for that game at all.
Then why play him?
I don't know. That's a good question.
You need Mark Andrews against Texas. You need Mark Andrews against Oklahoma State. You need Mark Andrews against TCU. You don't need Mark Andrews against Tulane.
Hey, let's ask that same question then. What does Oklahoma do with Mark Andrews facing Baylor?
You don't play him.
Because they're saying right now, Lincoln Riley's saying they expect him to be at 100% this weekend. You're saying you don't play him?
No, I don't play him against Baylor because you have a week off after that, and then Iowa State. You got 2 weeks, basically the rest of the guy. You could have had 3 weeks. I don't play him, but I don't get paid the big bucks that Lincoln Riley does to make those decisions. Who's Oklahoma's starting running back?
Oklahoma's?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because that every time we ask that question, in all seriousness, the answer becomes more and more cloudy.
I mean, we were clear week 1 that it was Abdul Adams.
2, we said it was Trey Sermon.
It was Trey Sermon. No. It was Abdul Adams going to Ohio State.
Oh, that's right.
Because we said, I called, you called.
Week 2 we said.
We called. Well, I thought you were on board as well. I called Abdul Adams against UTEP. I said he was. And then
you wrote an article. I wrote an article. Different perspective.
And then we had Abdul Adams based off of the UTEP performance as the guy going into Ohio State. And then we called it Trey Sermon is going to start Tulane. And then that depth chart comes out, has Trey Sermon number 1. Trey Sermon, the guy that I said last week has the most potential of all of these backs. He looked like the slowest back on the field. Now, he scored a touchdown, but he looked like the slowest running back on the field the other night. He looked like he was running with ankle weights on. Marcellus Sutton was the guy I was most impressed with.
Not me.
You're back to Adams?
Yeah. I thought Heading into the season, I said Abdul Adams was the best running back on the roster. Week 2, all of that changed. Week 3, heading into week 4, I think we're back. Abdul Adams had the most impressive performance on the field. Hey, I just want to throw out a quick note for you. Marquise Brown is number 29 on single game receiving list.
For freshmen.
Yeah, but he's a sophomore, so it doesn't count.
Oh.
Didn't think about that.
Oh.
So he's 29 on the list with 155.
All right, look, Adams averaged 11.6 yards a carry. Sutton 10.5. You want to guess on Trey Sermon?
3.8.
You were really close. 3.1.
I knew it wasn't a lot.
How does it happen like that? How do you go from being really the star at Ohio State to
let's ask the question: what kind of plays did they draw for Trey Sermon?
The same. I think they drew the same plays for all of them.
Because I thought the offensive line did extremely well.
Trey Sermon looked indecisive, and he looked like he didn't want to lose that starting position. Abdul Adams looked like, and even on Marcellus Sutton's touchdown, Abdul Adams is the lead block on that. Abdul Adams is the block that springs Sutton in. Abdul Adams looked like he had something to prove, and Marcellus Sutton just like, hey, how come those talking about me? You know, I don't know, man. I wouldn't be surprised if it's back to Adams at Baylor.
Anderson
Rodney Anderson. Guy averaged 2 yards a carry. I mean, we said this about Rodney Anderson. I think, and give the guy credit for making it back after 2 injuries, but I think his time has passed. On this back, to me, he's still number 4.
Yeah.
And wish him the best, but I don't know, man. This running back situation is as clear as mud as what they say here in Oklahoma.
You and I have said numerous times that Oklahoma's not going to have a back who carries the ball on every single game.
Yeah, but you've got to have right. But you go back and we've talked about.
I don't think it's going to be 4 that it needs.
No,
to be 2.
It can't be 4. I mean, it could be 3 maybe, where you have 2 feature backs and you have that guy that comes in and spells the feature backs. But you go back to these
a goal line guy even.
You go back to these. The goal line guy is none of those guys.
I know, but what I'm saying
the goal line guy is Dimitri Flowers. I mean, but you've got again. You go back to the great list of running backs when there was that duo. There was one. They were both good, but one of them was the feature. Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine. They're both good, but Joe Mixon's the feature. DeMarco Murray, Chris Brown, both good, both 1,000-yard rushers in 2008, but DeMarco Murray's the feature. Kejuan Jones.
You do so hot for me in fantasy
I tried to tell my son Caleb about that as well. But Kejuan Jones, Adrian Peterson, both good backs, but Adrian Peterson was the feature. We don't know what the feature is here.
We don't, and I don't know that we're going to learn it.
And I don't necessarily know that's a good thing. No. We won't. We'll know more after Texas. Defensive side of the ball. Moving along here.
Can we start with the secondary?
Well, I'm just going to say. Oh wait, offensive player of the game for you is who? Offensive player of the game. You didn't go with Rodney Anderson?
No.
You didn't even laugh at that. You were just like, whatever, dude.
Matt, it's difficult to pick anyone besides Baker Mayfield.
Okay, how about this? Let's do this. Offensive player of the game not named Baker Mayfield.
I would go with Lamb, but then he was ejected. I like
2 touchdowns.
Lamb. Yeah, I like Lamb. What was it? 6 catches, 2 touchdowns?
Yeah.
Or 4 catches, 2 touchdowns?
I got that right here in front of me. I'll tell you what it was.
Yeah, so I would, if it's not named Baker Mayfield, I would go with Lamb.
4 catches, 131 yards. Half of his catches were touchdowns.
He's got a lot of potential.
And I really like Marquise Brown. What we saw of him, we've heard a lot about his speed,
right?
And we kind of saw that on display. And if there's something that came out of the CeeDee Lamb ejection, they were going to play a lot of guys anyway.
Kyler Murray's a pretty darn good backup.
Did you? Well, Marquise Brown after the game, he said, we practice that every day. So.
I don't remember who was mentioning that, but they said they had a specific name.
Yeah, it was something.
Post.
Yeah, and by the way, Kyler Murray was 3 for 3. Now it's garbage time, but he was perfect on his passes. Okay, defensive side of the ball. You want to start in the secondary?
Yeah, I do.
Can we just go ahead and say Parnell Motley was the defensive player of the game?
All right. Parnell Motley's. He should have 3 interceptions through 3 games. As a sophomore, a first-year starter,
he should have more than that. Because there was we talked about the interception that was not the interception against Ohio State, but earlier in that game he dropped a clear interception as well.
Yeah, but I mean, this one was a review.
All right, go ahead. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Anyway, he's been playing extremely well after taking over that starting position from Jordan Parker. Needless to say, player of the game. I agree with you, but the secondary, you've got to be pretty impressed with them. I get that Tulane's not going to throw the ball a lot. But what they're being asked to do, and this goes back to even Ohio State because they lost Will Johnson, and then his replacement, Robert Barnes, out as well. It's a group that's had a lot of shift and has lost a lot of depth moving forward. How impressed are you with their performance, or is it just a so-so because of the style of offense that they were seeing?
No, I don't think it's the style of offense. I mean, the triple option is actually a more complicated offense to defend than what a lot of people view it as, because it can run you sideline to sideline, or it can take you vertically.
And Tulane is running the spread.
Yeah, and
triple option,
right. So you've got to be sound with that. But here's what it comes down to, and I'm going to give you a little bit of coach speak here, but it comes down to Parnell Motley, because when you have two. Think about this. How many times have you heard Jordan Thomas's name mentioned in 3 games?
It's a good thing, though.
Right.
That you haven't.
Right. So you've got a NFL lockdown corner in Jordan Thomas. Mm-hmm. So you have to go to Parnell Motley's side. And that's why Parnell Motley's having, Parnell Motley is going to be the Jordan Thomas next year.
Right.
No one's going to throw at him next year. So when you've got 2 guys like that, you can do a whole lot more with your safeties. So what they were limited in last year is you have to do what's called roll the safety over. You've got to roll that safety towards the side of the field that you're weakest at. And so when, for example, Ohio State, you've got your weak on that side of the field. And so you've got to keep your safeties over there, which opens up running lanes. It opens up underneath passing lanes. It opens up a whole lot of things because you've got to compensate where you're weak. Having Parnell Motley as being as good as advertised allows you to play what's ISO. I mean, one-on-one, put them on the island, so to speak, and you can do whatever you want to with your safeties. Are you looking at yourself on camera?
No, I was reading the comments.
You can blitz with your safeties. You can roll them deep. You can cover thirds. You can do so much more with your safeties, knowing that you're solid on both sides of the field. And that's the advantage that Mike Stoops has right now with this secondary and really with the whole defense. This defense is good because they're loaded with talent. And the thing about it is they're still fairly young.
Yeah.
They're loaded with talent, but what it is they're anchored by 2 elite cornerbacks. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to worry. Your safety has to make a decision. Do I roll over? Do I cover up the third, whatever my third is on the field? Do I give run support or whatever? How many times have we, and not just OU football history has happened, but when you're watching football in general, how many times have you seen a deep play because the safety bit on a play fake? And the reason why is that safety has to make a decision. Do I bite here or do I help cover the corner?
Right.
OU right now doesn't have that problem. Now, they're going to face some offenses like TCU and Oklahoma State where those safeties will have more coverage responsibility. But right now, it's not an issue. And that's leading to a much better defensive secondary, which overall leads to a much better defense. I think one of the things that's underlooked, and I said this even after Ohio State, one thing that's underlooked about this defense is how good the front seven is. And I don't think people expect them to be this good, but they're good.
And largely, you mentioned how young this team is. It's largely because of, you've got a sophomore starting at linebacker. You've got a true freshman starting at linebacker. An unheralded defensive line with guys who you knew their names when they were recruited, but didn't have a major impact on the field. And so DJ Ward, Neville Gallimore.
But well, and the thing about particularly a guy like DJ Ward is they've been able to bring him along. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to throw him in. Some guys get in there. Some guys like Eric Stryker, Obo, they get on campus and you're like, we got to get this guy on the field.
The reality for me is I think a guy like DJ Ward benefits significantly from a 4-man front versus the 3-man front.
Well, yeah.
And they're not asking him to assume linebacker responsibilities anymore.
But he also benefits from exactly what you're saying, but he also benefits from being in the program and putting on weight, learning the schemes, learning technique. He benefits greatly from that. And now when it's his time to be the guy, he is the guy.
Right.
And people just, because they weren't familiar with seeing him on an every down type basis, you look at this defense and you think, well, they lose this guy, they lose this guy, they lose this guy. But they've got Obo back, so Obo is the best guy on that defensive front 7. Well, he is the best guy on that defensive front 7, but it's a pretty dang good front 7 that's anchored by 2 tackles in the middle, and it's a good rotation of tackles. But I think Matt Romar, that's another guy. I don't play against Baylor. I figure out what's wrong with you. Let's get you fixed, and I bring you back against Iowa State.
Let me ask you this while we're talking about the defensive line. Devonta Lampkin is a guy we haven't seen. He was suspended for the first game. You know why?
Academic. Yeah. It's an academic.
And so it's continued to be that the academic reasons why we haven't seen him. That's why
I don't think that's the reason why we haven't seen him.
You can take that up with Lincoln Riley. I'll let you do that.
Well, I
get coach speak, okay?
Right.
Not wanting to reveal too much. And Lincoln Riley's been really good about not revealing stuff because how many guys have suffered injuries and we don't even know what that injury is?
But here's the thing, is that, the academic issue prevented him from getting the reps that he needed. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he's in the doghouse anymore. I just think he's behind with these other guys.
He may very well be. I was going to say if they want to implement him on the defense against Baylor, how does that shake things up? Does it?
He's not a starter. I mean, he doesn't shake things up. I mean, especially if you're going to set Matt Romar, he just becomes a rotational guy. And that's what I would do with him. I mean, if he's ready. But you don't want to put a guy in there. Now that you're getting a conference play, I mean, he had 2 games to get ready, UTEP and Tulane. Because he's not a guy. Are you going to trust him against Ohio State? I'm not.
No.
And I don't know that I want to trust him against Baylor. Not that Baylor's anything great, but I'm just saying, man, once we get a comfortable lead, we'll put you in there. Or once our guys get gassed and we need to spell them for 2 or 3 downs, you're going to go in there. But you're not an every down guy for me.
Baylor's getting 5 players back this upcoming week. 4 on the defensive side of the ball, 1 on the offensive side of the ball. Are they going to be a different team than what we see? Or what we've seen so far?
I mean, it's the same thing. It's 5 players playing their first game. Mm-hmm. Are those 5 players better than anybody Oklahoma faced at Ohio State?
No. No, I mean, not at all.
And here again, we talk about overlooked things, overlooked factors. Oklahoma has some road tests. I mean, undeniably, they have some road tests ahead of them. But name a more hostile environment that they're going to go into than what they did in the Horseshoe. No one in the Big 12 has an environment like that.
No, not. I mean. And that's sheer numbers. Let's be honest here.
Well, it is sheer numbers, but there's nothing like that in the Big 12.
There's not. That's a tough environment to play in for anybody.
You look at this and you think, well, Stillwater is going to be their toughest road test that's left, and I agree that it is. But Stillwater pales in comparison to Columbus, Ohio. I mean, 60,000 fans are going to suddenly do something that 105,000 fans couldn't do. Anyway, we're digressing. Here's what I'm giving actually on my rankings. I'm giving defensive backs an A+, and then I'm giving B's for both the line and the linebackers just for those first 2 drives.
Yeah.
It's just not
the first half.
Yeah, we'll go that way. It's not an A+ performance. Not even an A performance for those guys. I'm looking at my notes here. Here's what I want to know from you. We kind of started going down this road, and then we chased rabbits. Give me nationally. Give me your top 4. If you get to sit down with a playoff committee and say, guys, here's my recommendation, and they are in order from best to worst. Here's my top 4 teams. Go.
As of
right
today,
now, as of 3 weeks of football.
Clemson's my number 1.
Okay.
And I know you're shocked by that. Now,
welcome.
Shocked by that.
Just welcome to my side of the fence.
Number 2, I don't want to put Alabama there, but it's tough for me to say that they're not deserving because they played for a national. Didn't they play for a national championship?
Yeah, they lost to Clemson.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then Ohio State was the year before.
Right.
So yeah, I've got Clemson, defending national champions, 2 best wins of the year, seasonally best season so far. Alabama win over Florida State, top 10 program, week 1. Then I put Oklahoma with that win in the horseshoe against number 2 Ohio State, and 4, I'm going to put Penn State there.
Okay, I'm gonna flop a little bit. Clemson's number 1 for me. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put Oklahoma number 2.
Okay.
And here's
get on board with that.
Well, here's the reason why. I get Alabama gets all the love, and Alabama's a good team. They may end up being the best team in the country, but they beat Florida State on a neutral field. Clemson went to Louisville. Oklahoma went to Ohio State. That's why Oklahoma's number 2. I've got Alabama 3, and then I'm putting Oklahoma State in at number 4.
Okay. I can get on board with all of that.
I am not sold on the Big Ten right now.
And that's absolutely fine. I mean, Penn State hasn't played terribly tough opponents. I'm getting all kinds of phone calls.
It's because you're a popular man.
My question for you, Matt, before the season ever began, I had a conversation with you, and it went something along the lines of this. Alabama is the best team in the country. We might as well hand them the trophy now.
Yeah.
Do you still agree with that?
I still think there's potential for that. I mean,
but do you see now that we've had 3 weeks that there's some other programs who could actually
Alabama's going to go in the playoff 13-0. I'm a firm believer in that. I think we talk about conferences, and this is just one humble Oklahoma and Midwestern person opinion. If you rank the conferences from bottom, the worst Power 5 conference is the Pac-12.
Right.
Second worst Power 5 conference is the SEC.
Okay.
It's Alabama and everyone else.
It is. And you and I talk about this all the time, so I'm not going to rehash it. But the SEC and its reputation rides on Alabama.
It does.
And how Alabama does.
And people talk about the Big 12. Well, Texas is down. And I did a 10-minute rant 2 weeks ago. The Big 12 has been carrying Texas for almost a decade now. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the Longhorns are 1-2, no one in the Big 12 is shocked by that. And the Big 12 is actually doing pretty good without them. But you can't make Texas the bell cow of the Big 12 like you make Alabama the bell cow of the SEC. But the SEC is not. I mean, who is there? There is not a national title contender in the SEC other than Alabama. You can argue with a couple of guys. I mean, Florida State was there. I think Clemson is there. You can argue about the ACC. You can make arguments about the Big Ten. I don't believe you can make arguments about the SEC. I think you can clearly say right now the Pac-12 has no national championship contender. I think you can say that. And that includes Washington. I'm not sold on Washington. I wouldn't punt to Pettis, though. I don't think there's a contender for the Pac-12. There's one contender in the SEC. Alabama's going to go into – if Alabama doesn't run the table, they're still going to get in at 12-1. But I think Alabama's going to go in the playoff 13-0. And I think Alabama's good. I think they're really good. They're better along the front than I thought they would be. They're good. But I think Alabama is still susceptible to the same things they were susceptible last year, and that's speed.
I'm not the biggest fan of Alabama's offense.
It's a power offense. I mean, it's a power offense.
They've got it. They could very well all around be the best defense in the country.
But they're not susceptible to speed. They are susceptible to speed. They have to adjust the speed, and that's the problem that they're going to face in the playoff. But I agree. I still stand by it. I think Alabama is very good. But based off of 2-3 weeks of football, why are you laughing?
Just guys, man. I thought I was going to get you. I didn't think you were going to say that.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying, based off of 3 weeks of football, I put them behind Oklahoma. But here's the thing.
Your rankings don't have them at number 1.
But they don't, because it's based off of what they've done through 3 weeks. And I don't know. Alabama doesn't have a game left on their schedule that would equate to what Oklahoma did at Ohio State. That game is not on Alabama's schedule. So, I mean, we still have 2 months of football, 2.5 months of football left, but whatever. All right, so top 4. All right, let's go with the Big 12 rundown. We're about 5 minutes left. Conference play starts. Well, I'm going to talk about 2 things real fast. The first thing I want to talk about, Texas and USC. We talked about just a little bit, instant classic, terrible football.
Instant classic.
I do think things are getting better at Texas, though. I don't think it was gloom and doom, and we enjoyed that after they lost to Maryland in the season opener. But I see improvement here from this Texas team. Is there anything about Texas as we get ready to start conference play? They're off this weekend. Is there anything about Texas that you see go, man, that does kind of scare me?
Yeah, and it's that magical fairy dust that's lurking around somewhere. Tom Herman's still looking for it, so just throwing it out there. I will say this. In terms of what they're capable of doing, their defense has been the most impressive thing of the season for them. And I think that they can cause a little bit of trouble for a quarterback who gets a little bit too comfortable.
Right.
And so if I'm saying there's one thing about Texas is I think they've got athletes all over the field, and specifically in that secondary.
Okay, let me ask you this. Probability ratings. You got to lay down $50 right here or $50 right here. Probability right here is that Texas is better than we thought they were. Like they're capable of going toe to toe with a top 5 team. That's this $50 probability. Or the probability here is USC has no business being a top right 5. There. Okay.
Instantly, no questions asked.
Okay.
I've said that from day one.
All right.
And let me ask you this in conjunction with that question: how much do rankings really look at a win streak that you're on?
Apparently not at all, because Oklahoma has the longest win streak in the country.
They do, and they were number 2.
Hey, by the way,
USC's number 2 in terms of the longest winning streak at 11.
Yeah,
which went to 12 this
right.
week.
And there's another streak that people aren't talking about as much.
The streak of 28.
Well, I'm talking about Baker Mayfield's true road game streak. He's never lost a true road game, and people aren't talking about that as much. I will look back here on a note. One of the overlooked things that I really Saturday was my first time to see Oklahoma play in person this season. I was sick during the UTEP game. I didn't make it there, so I saw it on TV. But I noticed this Saturday night. One thing that I don't know that we have talked about. We've talked about that they're good. This offensive line unit, we've talked about they're good. But one thing I don't think we've talked about, and after watching them, this team is nasty. Those guys aren't just good, they are nasty. And what I mean by that is they're going to knock you down. They're just going to straight pancake you, and then they're going to tower over you and tell you, I'm coming back to the next play. I loved watching those guys do that. I mean, they play with such an edge. It's been a long time since I've seen Jamal Brown. Probably that year, Jamal Brown was a nasty offensive lineman. You go back and look at film of Jamal Brown. He's driving guys literally 30 yards downfield. Just driving them. Why? Because he can. He can do that. And he's going to do that every play, and he will demoralize you as a defensive lineman because he just took you 30 yards, and then as you're walking back, he's saying, it's about to happen again. I'm coming back. And there's nothing you can do about it as a defensive lineman. Absolutely nothing. And I saw that out of this the attitude of this. It's not just Orlando Brown. It is across the board. Those guys are just demolishing people, and then they are giving them an earful on the way back. And it got to the point where in the fourth quarter, I can't remember the guy's name, a defensive lineman for Tulane just hauled off and hit Orlando Brown. Because he just, and when that happened, I said, that has been coming for 4 quarters now, or 3 quarters, whatever that point of the game that happened. And that was the end of the game for Orlando Brown. He did it, and you just saw him celebrate. Like when that guy hit him and the referee threw the flag, it was like he looked at the dude and pointed at him and just, just because he knew at that point that guy admitted defeat.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get a chance to go see these guys in person, there are a lot of things to look at. There's a lot of speed. There's the running backs. There's Baker Mayfield, who is just phenomenal. But watch with the nastiness that this offensive line plays with. They are just incredible. Sorry, we have 12 seconds left.
I'm glad that you mentioned Jamal Brown because I had an opportunity to meet Jamal Brown. And Jamal Brown is one of those – I don't think you find it very often, specifically an offensive lineman, a guy who's that talented, but also has the work ethic to go behind it. And I know there have been some very talented offensive linemen, NFL caliber linemen, who have come between Jamal Brown. I almost said Charles. Whoa, wrong team completely. Jamal Brown and Orlando Brown.
Right.
But when you look at Orlando Brown, I think you finally see a guy who is that elite level talent and also is willing to put the work in. Yeah. Because Orlando Brown's the one he's the one who sets the expectations.
Oh, for sure. But these other guys fall right in line.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. And everyone will credit that to Orlando Brown and the program. But I'm saying that's a guy that you see who is finally bringing that tenacity back.
Yeah.
Like I said, there have been some really, really good offensive linemen between these two.
Yeah, it is a nasty, nasty offensive line to watch.
You met Jamal Brown, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought. I thought we were there together.
Yeah. Okay. Light slate on the Big 12 as we go into overtime now. West Virginia, Kansas, the only game I don't have interest in. I have to tell you this. Texas Tech, I could have been wrong, but Texas Tech is quietly 2-0 with I was impressed with their win over Arizona State. They still don't have a defense. There is no defense played in Lubbock, Texas, which I think will be the downfall for Cliff Kingsbury. But they may be a little bit better than I thought they were going to be. 52-45 over Arizona State. That's a good win for them. I still think they're going to be in that bottom third of the conference, right. But they could sneak out 6 wins. I think it's more probable now because think about it, there's 10 games left. They only got to win 4 of those 10 to get bowl eligible. But Texas Tech plays at Houston. That's going to be a fun game. And then Oklahoma Baylor. That's just going to be Fox Sports 1 is where that game's going to be found. Sooners are 27.5-point favorites. We're going to actually do this differently. We are OU fans at heart. That is our team. But the biggest game of the week is TCU at Oklahoma State. So let's start with Oklahoma Baylor. Give me your score prediction here.
I'm looking at your score prediction.
Oh, you cheater.
And I don't think Baylor gets as many points as you're going to get.
Really don't think so?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's going to be very close to your score, though. All right. I'll give Baylor 13, and again, I'm going Oklahoma 49.
13 is close.
I know. I was actually going to go 7, but looking at your score scared me.
All right.
It went up a little bit.
I got 42-17 Sooners over the Bears on the road. All right, Oklahoma State at home against TCU. This is going to be a fun game. TCU, again, my up-and-comer, my bounce-back team, my sleeper team, TCU plays this close, but they fall in the end. This is a fourth quarter. This is a game with 7.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. This game is still very much up for grabs. But I think Oklahoma State 35-31 over the Frogs.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma State's going to overpower them offensively and put a lot of pressure on that TCU offense. I don't think it's as close as you do. I think Oklahoma State continues scoring up into the 50s again. Okay. So I'm going 52-35.
All right, well, we'll find out Saturday. I feel like there's one more thing I need to say, but I don't know what it is. So he's Rich. I'm Matt. Heartland-sports.com. You can find us on Twitter at SportsHeartland on Twitter. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching on Facebook Live, and thanks for finding us on TalkShoe. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Time is gone.